Right, hi. I'm Josh, and I suppose you're wondering why I'm giving you a talk about how to get a job at Google. So it'd be good to give you a little bit of information about myself. I'm from Tasmania. I'm doing a PhD in mathematics. You can read all about that in the bio. Let's see. When I found Google was in the year 1999. And despite the fact that Matrix was showing in cinemas, my family PC ran off one of these. Ooh. Yep. 386 runs a blistering speed of 33 megahertz. Comes in a case with a turbo button. It was released in 1985, and if you do the maths, that's 14 years. I was 14 years out of date. Such a shame. It didn't stop me having fun, though, because, among other things, I could run Windows. And, okay, so for those of you counting, it's 1992. Okay, so that's 7 years out of date. We could also run QBasic. It's very good fun. Interesting fact, did you know actual games are being published built in QBasic still? There's one you can get on Steam. Speaking of games, there's also Jazz Jackrabbit. It's one of my favourite games of all time. However, my grandmother and my school both had somewhat faster computers, and they also had these strange devices called modems, and that let me use the magical thing known as the internet. It's cool in those days because everybody had a GeoCities page, or it had table layouts, you know, animated backgrounds, blink tags. It's all really fun. I can't think of many games these days which come with cheats, but you know, back in those days you could look up cheats on the internet. And the way you found these pages was with the search engine. And so who can guess what the most popular search engine in 1999 was? Alta. Very good.
Most powerful guides.
There's just so much gold on this web page. Anyway, it rapidly stopped being everyone's favourite and started being everyone's favourite. I think, was Google the first one to break 1 billion pages indexed? I can't remember. So anyway, long story short, I eventually heard about these two Stanford dogs who did something cool with matrices and web page links, and it was kind of inspiring because that's what I wanted to do, as it turns out, be a programmer, learn software engineering, and you know, up to that point I didn't even have the words to describe what I wanted to be. So because that convinced me that it was a worthwhile endeavour to go into software engineering and related fields, and fast forward 14 years and here I am giving a talk. Trying to finish my PhD, and I did computing and science in undergrad and that sort of stuff. So that's like one reason why I'm here talking to you about Google. Another reason is that actually this isn't just to talk about Google. You can actually scratch out Google and you can replace it with almost anywhere. The simple reason that lots of companies borrow ideas about how to run their company from Google. Lots of companies have remarkably similar sets of perks now, and manage their people in similar ways too. So I suppose I should finally mention that this isn't an official Google talk. I'm not a Googler. I'm not here on behalf of them. I'm not getting paid by them at the moment. I guess let's enumerate this. I'm not a Google recruiter. Don't give me your resume, or I'm not going to give you business cards or any of that. It's 100% unofficial. I'm not even like you would have been better off going off to that talk yesterday by Jed. Hopefully you did. However, I have been an intern, so I am somewhat qualified, and I can also say that yes, because I am. Yeah, I've signed a contract and I'm going to work at Google at the end of the year. I can actually talk to you about this stuff. So, first of all, why Google? Well, why not Zoidberg? After all, Google is your, your evil friend who is God and Skynet. Your evil friend God Skynet, yeah. Okay, so the obvious reasons to work for Google sort of go like this. Money. The base pay at Google is really good. In fact, it's really good for across most Silicon Valley companies. It doesn't matter, Google, Apple, Microsoft, whatever. So the base salary is pretty high, but then they add all sorts of things on top of it. There's the bonuses every year, and then you get paid with stock options, and I can't remember how many they gave me in signing, but some number. And because the stock is so high, it turns out it was quite a bit of money. The second reason you should consider working for Google is it looks great on a resume. Even if you've just done an internship, recruiters love ex-Googlers. They will find you. They will send you lots of emails. A third reason to work for Google, they've got offices everywhere. So, well, okay, not all across Australia, but at least in Sydney, yeah, that's a start. But hey, if you want to work in Europe or the US or Japan or somewhere else, they will give you, like if you're employed by Google, what will happen is, and you want to work somewhere else, if you've got a business reason, they'll give you language lessons and like a full relocation package and all this other stuff that's really nice. And the offices, they're certainly not the same office each. They've all got their own themes, but they're all very varied, but you can still expect all the other sort of benefits, which I'll now talk to you about now. So the benefits of working for Google, these are the reasons why it's occupied the top spot on Fortune's 100 best companies to work for list for a couple of years. Why? This is not why. You get food. There's lots of food. It's really good food. There's a thing around known as the Google 15. That's what the interns refer to as the 15 kilograms you put on because you eat so well. But that's just not just like breakfast, lunch and dinner, which is, of course, why would you have less than 3 meals a day? If you get peckish, no, they don't feed you cake. They do feed you cake, but that's beside the point. You don't have to wait for lunch. There are micro kitchens, right? This is one of the ones in Sydney. It's lollies, breakfast cereal, jerky, yogurt, sushi, chips, whatever. And it's continually refreshed during the day. It's also espresso machines. There's a games room. It's got Guitar Hero and a pool table, and it's just so much fun. And it doesn't matter what Google office it is. Like this is a data center, and they've also got table tennis tables, and it's just great. So other benefits include the library. You can go have a nap on the hammock, go stick yourself in the sleep pod, not get any interference from your colleagues. There's perks everywhere. You can, need I say more? So you might not be convinced that any of these reasons are good enough. You might be convinced that Google is completely evil, and that's a perfectly valid opinion to have. But Google would disagree. And here are a few excerpts from the 10-point Google philosophy that you can find online. So it's best to do one thing really, really well, which is a bit paradoxical because Google seems to do everything these days. But what that actually means is, well, it's a bit like how Larry Page said, more wood behind fewer arrows. So they're basically saying, we've got teams of people and they're really focused, they're really interested in the thing that they do. And that's the point there. Fast is better than slow. And Google take this really seriously. For instance, they got fed up with browsers, so they made Chrome because browsers needed to be faster, and they succeeded in that sort of goal, and they sort of re-kicked up the browser wars. So if you're a performance optimization nerd, you should definitely consider working for Google. Democracy on the web works. This is a little-known Google product called Moderator, and it's a pity that it doesn't get used more because what it does is it dynamically sorts questions that you submit to it for people ask, and then you can vote the questions up and down, and then it provides like a decent mix. And what Google does is, well, it might not be used much outside Google, but they certainly use it inside Google. So every Friday at the Friday meeting with Larry and Sergey and the rest of the executive team is that they'll get up and they'll answer a bunch of questions from this thing. So it makes sense to pay attention to that. And finally, also not finally, who knows this guy? Anyone, yes? Vint Cerf, yes, and what's he famous for?
The internet.
He's famous for the internet, that's right, but he's also famous as being the only Googler who wears a suit. You can be serious without a suit, you can be non-serious with a suit. If you go to a Google office, you'll find very few people wearing suits. Usually the people wearing suits are salespeople. Who knows what this logo is? Data Liberation, Data Liberation Front. It's an initiative of some Googlers who got fed up with the fact that you couldn't export data easily out of Google products. Like, what format does your little map bookmarks come out in? It doesn't make any sense. But so they created Google Takeout. You can download all sorts of stuff, and I think this is just one example of Google trying not to be evil. You can disagree with me that they are evil. In which case, a very good reason to work for Google would be to worked at Google to change Google, right? To make it good again. That's what I'm thinking I'll do. Some last points I want to say about Google, because it's such a great place to work. I'm such a fanboy. The culture is really cool. So at Google, the work is always really cool, because if you're in the engineering department, you get to work building cool stuff, or as Google's marketing put it themselves, do cool things that matter. There are plenty of examples of these cool things, but examples of things that Google does that matter, like things that Google do that matters. You want to check out google.org, right? Some things you can find on there. You'll find the crisis response, like websites they run to help, like any natural disaster that's happened in recent years. They've helped out with that. And the person finder, so if someone goes missing during an earthquake or a nuclear disaster, it's centralised way of finding people. Another point about the culture, this is the last, is that they're really inclusive, insanely inclusive. I've not been in a more inclusive workplace. They go to huge lengths to promote inclusiveness, and you'll find all sorts of examples that they've got. See what else? They're a partner of the Anita Borg Institute. They're very proud of that. They fund diversity scholarships globally. The offices have various different kinds of rooms. Like I mentioned the massages before. You could get massage. They've got a massage room, but they've also got a mothering room, and prayer rooms, and Google also participates in all sorts of community events. For instance, each year they put a float in the Mardi Gras parade. This was 2012. I witnessed this thing personally. It's very impressive. No other company I know goes to that sort of length. So, in any case, the very final thing about the culture is they've got a great sense of humour. This is the internal meme service called MemeGen, and this is not secret. This has been known to the internet for a little while. They've got all. I think that this was taken around about the time that Marissa Mayer went to Yahoo's, accomplished tech leader, finally leading a non-profit. It gets memes on it all the time. Okay, so how do you land a job at Google? Well, I'm about to tell you the number 0 secret. Apply. Thank you. Oh, crap, got my laptop. I wasn't actually going to run that. Okay, so here's your inspirational quote for applying to Google. Most people never pick up the phone. Most people never ask. And that's what separates sometimes the people that do things from the people that just dream about them. So, if you feel like you want to try and work at Google, just hunt that whale, But you're probably here for more interesting tips, so let's start on that. So Google's mostly kind of a software engineering company. We think of it as doing all sorts of software stuff, a bit of hardware stuff too. But in particular, when it comes to software, we think of Google as being an internet company. We consider it a bit of a cloud services company. Not really that guy. But I don't believe in the cloud, because that's just the internet. So a concept that makes a bit more sense would be something a bit more funny, something that's got a nice hat, say something you can really leverage and get behind to complete your computing objectives. And it's best sometimes that we get our heads out of the cloud and start talking about programming. So who can tell me what the big 4 languages used at Google? Yep.
C, Go, and Python. Whitespace.
So we had Go and Python. Yeah, Go and Python. Java, Java. So there's 3. Well, yeah, they do kind of use Dart because they made it C++. Yeah, so C was close. Anvil animation, yes. According to legend, these are the 4 most used languages. So what you should probably do is you should learn at least more than one of them. You don't have to, of course, but what this demonstrates is your ability to learn and your willingness to do so. So if you know Java, learn Python. If you know Python, learn Go. If you know Go, you're pretty awesome, but learn C++, and so on and so forth. This leads into my next tip, which is if you have limited time, focus on a completely different paradigm. Like if you know imperative programming, learn a functional language. If you know functional languages, do, I don't know, Prolog or something. But this shows that you have initiative to really bend your brain. But a word to the wise, it can be very tempting to consider yourself ultimate grandmaster of the computer once you know one or two languages. And don't do that. That is terrible. Don't claim to know a language if you don't. Just because you feel confident, like if you claim that you know Java, for instance, you should actually know it and not be lying. Like, you should know all sorts of little things about practical Java programming, like, well, it's not just C with objects, for instance, it's, I don't know, if you override the equals method, you've got to override the hashcode method, and so on and so forth. All the little nitty-gritty details about the language. And that goes for anything. Like, if you feel like you know Objective-C because you know a bit of C, so, no, it's not the same. You have to know about how Cocoa and the class library works, and so all that sort of stuff. A benchmark that I have for claiming to know a language is doing something cool with it. So several years ago, I started ranting about Objective-C just now, right? So it's a good time to plug on about that. I thought iPhone apps are really cool, but it wasn't until I built a fully functioning app that I felt that I knew it. And I think that's a pretty decent benchmark. So just to sort of go on with the, don't be an X if you're not Y. Don't claim to be an expert if you're not. It's very hard to be an expert because in order to be an expert, you basically have to, create the thing in the first hand, or like write a book on it that gets published, or have lots of papers that get cited. It's actually quite difficult to be an expert on our subject. I wouldn't claim to be an expert in any language myself, even though I've been programming since I was, 1999, or before that even. If someone sees your name and your resume and then you claim to be an expert in something, they'll probably laugh for a bit and then, no. On the other hand, if you're like, suppose you're Guido van Rossum and you're reapplying to Google, they'll go, oh yes, that's the benevolent dictator of Python. He's clearly an expert, and I know his name, so on and so forth. The second point is like, don't claim to be a professional if you're not. But that's a much lower bar. So to be a professional developer, I would claim personally to be a professional Java developer, C# developer, iOS developer, and web developer. But that's only mostly because I've done serious work in those things and got paid. Just because you're doing a university degree doesn't make you a professional. Sorry, but that's the truth. It's not a ticket to a job. It helps a lot. It's very important to do that. But you're not a professional until you're actually doing things really seriously. And you can lie about that on your resume and it'll probably slip through, but when you're in an interview, it'll show up quite quickly. So, here's some other ideas for languages you could learn, just to get back on topic. These are some of the ones used by Google, in fact. You can probably think of heaps that they are using that aren't on this list, and so it's actually more useful to write a list of languages that they don't use. Yeah. Probably Fortran as well, maybe. Final anecdote about programming, the gopher looks like the Plan 9 bunny. Okay, so engineering practices that will help you in your life. Wherever you go in the world, you should be aware of modern software engineering practice. When it comes to code, Google is reasonably conservative, actually. And a lot of code base follows well-written rules and guidelines, is statically typed, usually, is very well maintainable, tweakable, and also concurrent safe. So it's all very important long things. And like a hugely important part is test engineering. When I say test engineering, I don't mean, hey, cool, let's fire it up and click a few buttons. It's not, it builds, submit it to the App Store. I mean, really thorough testing. And Google takes this sort of testing really seriously. And this is the reason why. Who knows what this, can you see that? There's a blue line. Who knows what this graph is? Uptime. Wow, uptime, yeah, close. That's the right sort of thinking. Runtime. Okay, I'll tell you. on one particular night, a couple of months ago, at about 11:51, Google made a change to server somewhere. And then an estimated 40% of web traffic disappeared. And Google loses a lot of money when that happens. So tip number 3, like whether or not you go to Google, in fact, even if you go to Google, you don't even have to pay this one much attention. But wherever you go in the world, and even if you don't finish a degree, what you should learn is test-driven development. Aside from being one less thing they'll have to teach you when you get there, it'll greatly improve maintainability of your code, learn how to write good tests, learn what mocking means, learn what dependency injection means. It will save you time. And like even undergrad assignments could benefit from a few unit tests here and there. Tip number 3.1, learn how to do like automated integration testing. If you're making websites, learn what Selenium is. I could go on. But I'll just like plug on why you need staging environments. This is something it's very difficult to learn while you're studying, but it's something that you learn very quickly when you're in actual professional environment, because you're very tempting to just deploy, and then you break something and like, what is the thing? Where can I find the thing that I deployed that broke? It's terrible. Okay, so next. Audience engagement question. Who knows how many servers Google has?
5.
5? Do I hear 5? Do I hear 6? Do I hear 6?
3.
6? This is reverse, not reverse option. Go away.
You go to like 100.
It's the wrong question. Because when it comes to servers in Google, it's like the scene in The Matrix where Neo says guns, lots of guns, and then suddenly guns. Google has such an unbelievable number of servers that you just don't talk about servers. It doesn't actually matter to anyone. They don't deploy servers, they deploy redundant data centers. That's right, and stormtroopers. So something to really pay attention to while you're studying is to learn how to write concurrent code. Learn at least one way of writing good concurrent code. Learn what a thread is or a process is, mutexes, channels, go routines. Whatever you actually do, you'll find that there are people who will understand that way of doing it. Yeah. It's really good to know. Really knuckle down on how concurrent code breaks. It'll help. So, how to boost your resume. Some other things you can do while you're still studying. What can you do? Learn how to type an accent. Oh, no. Just kidding. The one weird trick for your things that you're studying and things to be boosting your resume with is go for variety. This comes back to my point. It shows that you are capable of learning things yourself, learning new things, and taking initiative, because that's very important. It's important to have focus, and specialised skills will always be in demand, but the industry changes very quickly. Google's a prime example of this. If you cannot adapt and learn new skills, you will be made extinct. Doing a variety of things demonstrates you can learn beyond what people are teaching you. So, to give you some more direct tips, let's see. Participate in programming competitions. If you're not aware of programming competitions, you could actually win prizes and money, which is really cool. You can put it in your resume. Here's a couple of examples. You've probably run into these before. At the ICPC Top Coder run monthly competitions. You can win money from them. It's Top Coder open every year. There's also Google's own Code Jam. They're paying attention to that too. You don't have to wait for them to start. You can start practicing on them right now. Oh, what else? Next tip. Make something cool. If you can't get a job with someone, and let's face it, getting a job with someone other than Google is a good step on the way to getting a job with Google. You can at least make something cool. So make an app, make an Android app, an iPhone app, a Raspberry Pi app, make a web app, make, an Arduino thingy. You know what, there's even more ideas. Probably just anything. Solve a nagging problem that you have. Tim in the audience here has got a bit fed up with having to shuffle cards in TI, so he's writing an app that, I forget what it does exactly, but it helps you play the game faster. It's so cool. Make an app for your grandmother. I did this in 2006. She had a genealogical database. She's a family historian. She had a genealogical database. She was busy typing away into Excel. But you know what? This isn't queryable that easily. It's kind of slow and clunky, and it was computer science effort. So I wrapped it in a little app that we could install as Java, which was quite cool at the time. And yeah, actually, she gave me money. So, I mean, I guess that sounds like I'm ripping off my grandmother, but you know, make something to annoy your classmates. Cricket noises, they're fun. And if you know, if still don't have any ideas, I don't know, find Neil Gaiman's Make Good Art speech on YouTube and have a listen to that. I guess it might inspire you to at least try and make good art, if not programs. Another place you can find stuff to hack on, open source. Apparently there was just a talk on that, which was really cool. I missed it, unfortunately. But lots of low-hanging bugs. Sorry, low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging bugs buzzing around low-hanging fruit. You know, simple bug fixes, unit tests, refactoring, documentation, commenting, and Google will help you do that with the Summer of Code program. They propose a project and a mentor, and away you go after they approve it. It's not the best time frame in the Southern Hemisphere because it'll be the winter of code. Go for it. Yeah, exams as well. It's a bit lame, but yeah, what you can do. Another thing you can try. Did you know that evil hackers can turn your computer? It's bullshit. But what you can do is you can be an evil hacker and you can find and report security holes. Being a white hat hacker is a really good thing to do. You get the thrill of subverting systems, but also the good guy feeling of, yeah, I'm covering the good guys. But here's a reason to go, and another reason is, me into gibber at this point, Google will pay you if you find a decent enough bug. If you can get remote code execution on accounts.google.com, you're in big money. Some people actually earn basically an equivalent to a full salary, and they're not even hired officially by Google. They just report bugs. It's important to be very community-minded, so you know, if you still have no ideas, why don't you be the webmaster for a student society, if those are still a thing. I did this once. I was the webmaster for the Choral Society down in University of Tasmania, and that was fun. Died eventually, but it's beside the point. Something else to add to the resume. If you want to take things up a couple of notches, or you just don't have any student societies, consider contributing to professional organisations like the ACM, the ACS. Join up as a student member if they still have student memberships. And that sort of leads me on to, well, if you're going to be really community-minded, why not try promoting inclusiveness on your campus? Be an advocate. And, you know, there's heaps of stuff to talk about there. I'm not the best person to talk about it, but you can find all sorts of things online. All I had to do was ask someone, like, there's this huge list! Why are you asking me? You know, if you're female or whatever. And if you don't like any of those, start your own. These are all really important things that you can do. Yes?
Sure. Pretty well, but like, it's kind of how do you want to crack the coding interview when you go to Google? Like, I interviewed this time, and I don't know, interview was pretty easy, but the next round was really intense because that was a level of coding I wasn't prepared for.
Okay.
So you just like.
I'm going to get on to the interview stuff towards later on. So I'm getting there. I'm just trying to run through it actually quite quickly. But you know, if you're still worried about your resume, why don't you consider helping out other people? Sometimes we're all a bit of a koala around the half feather. So we'll try. You can run a conference. You can run a meetup. Run Coco Heads or something. You can tutor fellow students. You can give conference talks. Right, preparing to be Googled. So once you've sent in a resume or something, you get involved with this whole hiring process that Google has. It's actually not very long, so assuming each step is cleared successfully, so you probably talk to some recruiter somewhere, and then you get a phone interview, phone screen. If you're going for the straight hiring, then they usually, at some point, they bring you in for some on-site interviews, about 5 of those, and then it goes to hiring committee, and other stuff happens, and then you're hired. But it's worth talking about what happens in this point here, because after it passes the local hiring committee, the vice presidents of the company look over your resume and all the information. And they do this because Google hires for the long term. They're interested in finding out who you are and whether you're a good fit. Sounds a bit fishy considering Google's only just turned 15, but nevertheless they're interested in the long term. In the tech world, of course, 15 makes them a dinosaur. So definitely read Google's page on the hiring process, and definitely read some Google research papers if you're bored and want to go to sleep. Actually, they're quite interesting. Big table, chubby, all these really interesting things that they've invented to solve day-to-day problems. Now, if you want to make this whole process a lot easier, seriously consider doing an internship, which is what I did. And I'll take a few minutes to just talk about that. If you're doing a bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, I did it last year, so while I was doing a PhD, the internships are paid, which is one really cool thing. So this is my story. So I got an email from, after I basically passed the interviews. So okay, Susan said, what sort of project would you like to work on? And you might be wondering what these projects are. I don't know all the details. If you ask an engineer, they might have to kill you. Just kidding. Anyway, if you could look at the list, and what the list was, well, there was Geo, there was social, there was apps, there was Chrome, network infrastructure, developer platforms, and infrastructure security. And I thought, well, anything in that top 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the top 6 look pretty interesting. Not so keen on that last one though. So of course, I got this email after I sent my preferences. Allocations have been completed and you have been assigned to the infrastructure security team. Infrastructure security? So I spent a few minutes making a very stern look. And I realised it was probably going to be just fine anyway. So, as it turns out, Java is not merely a language or a virtual machine used at Google, it's also, okay, so yes, the internship turned out to be really interesting, but I mean, in terms of Java, right, it turns out it's full of security holes. And instead of doing the boring sounding task of fixing security vulnerabilities, my project was to build a tool that would assist in finding security vulnerabilities before they happened in live Google products, such as Gmail and Blogger. And this involved, I mean, other than doing all the programming, it also involved me downloading the Gmail front end and screwing around with that. But it also involved writing Java that would instrument the Java virtual machine, dynamically modify bytecode as it was loaded, and it had to be, and obviously the programs had to work, but it had to be efficient and concurrent and not break random absurd things. And in spite of the fact it was neither a user-facing product or the fact that it was based on Java, which I kind of hate, it was really cool. And I got a lot out of it. So definitely try and apply for an internship, is worth it. Best 3 months of my life so far, and if you are doing a master's or a PhD, definitely try and defer a scholarship for some amount of time to do an internship. And in terms of the actual process, so the whole thing sort of looks kind of the same, and then you do the internship, but then you can convert to become a full employee. And this involves some conversion interviews, which are kind of the same strength as the regular interviews. But there's only like 2 of them, two or three. You don't have to do as many. And the regular sort of dots happen in the middle and then you hide. So other benefits of doing an internship, it's kind of like being a full employee. You get paid. This is really nice. You get access to the production systems. You get access to nearly everything, in fact. There was one talk I went to, so Google had internal talks that get up during lunchtime and talk about stuff. But, well, actually not during lunchtime. That usually happens after lunchtime. But anyway, you can go see internal talks given about upcoming products and stuff. And there was one talk I went to by Julian. He's like a networks engineer, and he went through a bunch of internal stuff that I probably should have known, and then I talked to him about it later. So, yeah, I probably should have restricted interns from seeing that talk. Thanks for bringing that up. Another benefit of being an intern, you still get to dog food all the internal releases as well. So, for instance, when I did the internship, Google Drive had just been announced. I got to play with the apps that would talk to Google Drive before they were released, which was that was fun. We got a load of that. So, onto the interviews. It's very important. Yeah. So, it's a bit late now. I've forgotten how many tips I've given now. Go to Jed's workshop. Yes. Unfortunately, it's yesterday. So it's a bit late. Another very important tip, don't go out drinking with your mate Alex the night before. I'm not warning you about this because you'll be hungover and your brain will be slower. I'm warning about this because you'll feel like you're slower, then you'll feel like you're looking bad, and then you'll get stressed out, and then you'll muck up. Okay, next tip. Google interviewers are not as interested in your academic transcript as they are about how you think. It's a very important thing to keep in mind, because when they ask you the interview question, they're wanting you to demonstrate how you think. They're asking you to demonstrate how you solve the problem. So don't leap straight to a perfect solution. There probably isn't one. And don't worry about getting the right answer, because there's probably heaps of them. What's important is that you basically start from the start and figure out what the solution is going to be like. So they're testing you how you think. They're going to be ambiguous. You're going to have to ask questions to resolve the ambiguity. And you're also going to feel like you're not doing very well. But that's perfectly normal. The very important thing, though, is, again, don't lie. If you've seen a puzzle before that they're giving you, probably better to speak up and say, yeah, I've seen this one before. It happened to me. So when I did my internship interviews, like, oh, yes, here's this program. Find all the bugs in it. And went through over the phone with the engineer and said, oh, yes, these are the bugs. And then the second time, when I did my conversion interviews at the beginning of this year, I got the same problem. I went, well, this looks familiar. And the thought crossed my mind, should I lie? And I didn't. So I said, I think I've seen this before. I mean, the interviewer said, great. That's really great. I didn't know you'd seen it before, but if you had seen it before, I would have. It's very clear usually when that happens. They're onto you. So don't do that. Yeah, the important point, again, when showing how you think, ask the questions you need to resolve any ambiguity in the problem. And to show you what I mean, I'm just going to go through an example problem. Like if you went to the workshop yesterday, you probably got a question like this. I don't know how to go. So this is, hopefully it's not the same. Here's an example. Write code for a function that takes two lists and returns how many elements are common to both. Alright, so that's a pretty interesting question. And when you actually get to the interview, if you're in person, it'll be, here's a whiteboard and here's a whiteboard marker, write the actual function on the board. If it's over the phone, it'll be over Google Doc. So you're like, okay, here's this Google Doc, let's send you a link, and then you open them, write your code in here. So they get to actually watch you write and think about the problem, which is what they'd get in person. So, okay, so solving this problem, well, it looks pretty simple, right? So it'd be really tempting to just go, okay, well, I'm going to def function, list 1, list 2, colon. I recommend doing code in Python if you know it. Because it's really good on the whiteboards because
it's one line.
No, it's not that it's one line. It probably is one line in Python here. But, no, my point is, you don't have to worry about, you can do little semantic things like IJ is 0, 0, stuff like that. And you don't have to worry about what a list is in that instance because lists are fine. But if you used to do a different EM language, well, then you might be wondering, excuse me, yeah, do you have a preferred language for this solution? That shows that you may know more than one language, which is a very good thing. But it usually doesn't matter because they're very well versed in lots of languages. So what's a list? It's an array, it's a linked list. How are we going to traverse this thing? What does how many mean? Are we counting them? Is it a list of numbers? Do you want the sum of them? No, sorry, it's just the count. Right. Okay. What about duplicate items in each list? This is probably the important one that we're looking for. This says that you know that a list is not going to be necessarily set, or that it's going to be sorted or unsorted or something. Yeah. So then you go on the whiteboard. Now, after you've asked these questions, go on the whiteboard. Oh. No, I've actually run out of slides. So, okay, so I'm going to count both. And, you write a bunch of code and say, oh yes. What will usually happen is, oh yes, they'll take one look at it and go, that won't work. What you do in that situation is, because you'll only have used a small part of the whiteboard, so draw a line and go, okay, so now I'm going to trace through the program. This is probably the foolproof method for getting out of this point, is to actually trace through your program. So as it turns out, in one of my whiteboard interviews, I did have a bug. It was an internet loop. I didn't find it until I was like, okay, so I've got list 1 up here and list 2 here, and it's only 2 pointers or whatever it was. And then, oh yeah, so I'm not marching this pointer forward, and that's the bug. And assuming you get through that, you're actually looking pretty good. But what will happen next is they'll say, okay, what's the computational complexity of this algorithm you use through? And if you do it naively, well, a question like this, well, you're running through each list at least once, so it's got to be linear in the sum of both. But it doesn't have to be that way. You could sort, I mean, another way of solving the problem would be to sort one of lists and using it as a lookup for items in the other list. Which is perfectly reasonable. And then you have to go through, oh, well, so sorting is n on the end, assuming you use something like quicksort, and then, well, you're doing a logarithmic binary search in one of them. So knowing that sort of stuff and being able to sort of, that's the sort of thing that they're looking for. Like, how do you solve the problem? How do you think about the problem? What are the alternative solutions to the problem? Yeah. And assuming you clear all that, that's sort of really, really easy. And that's very good timing, because we're on to questions.
You said something that you can just say, I'll just use a node sort or a quick sort. Are you allowed to say that, or do you have to actually implement it?
Generally, you won't be expected to implement a sort. It's sort of expected that there's going to be a sort in the library. But they will be asking you kind of an algorithmic question. Whether it's, write code to do this or here's some code find bugs, it's going to be, you can reasonably expect something vaguely common involved.
Still, if you know how to write a sort, it is like 3 lines in Python, so you could write your own. You could get away with writing your own, but you're not expected. That's sort of not the thing they're going to worry about. And when you think about it, everyone actually goes and learns a sort when they do algorithms and things. Shut up. In algorithms units, they learn that sort of common thing. So they're going to ask you something a bit ad hoc, but still really tractable. They're going to ask you to solve an NP-hard problem or... Another interesting question that I got, so the guy that I said, I know this puzzle to, he said, okay, he came up with something on the spot, basically, and then he asked me a question about concurrently swapping items in a list. I'm like, oh, okay, so we've got multiple threads. Shut up! Stop texting me! Tipping tones.
I was responding to Paris, I think, behind.
Some people. Do we have any other questions?
Do they actually ask like the questions that everyone said they asked on the internet, like why a manhole covers round and how many golf balls?
Absolutely not. No, they don't ask those questions. Those questions are stupid.
I thought so.
They either show knowledge of obscure trivia, or they get to watch you fumble and this is very entertaining. Yes, it would be more for them rather than for you. I guess you could say that you walk out of a Google interview feeling that you learned something. I certainly did. Like one of the puzzle that involved solving bugs in a problem. So, it's got this shuffle thing that I've never heard of before, but it's actually really cool. It's got nice properties. I might use it in the future. Because if I hadn't even done the interview, I wouldn't have known it. It's great. Yeah, that's it. Stupid question like how many piano tuners are there in the world? Or, how do you get a golf ball out of the pipe? Which is stupid. Anyway, any other questions?
How do you get a golf ball out of the pipe? Is it mostly common that people who use Python pass the interview stage compared to like C++?
No. So you can. The point I was trying to make was. It's usually easier for you
to do on the fly.
It's usually easier for you to do because then you don't have to worry about for start memory management, which you have to worry about in C. You don't have to worry about funny standard library quirks like you would in Java or C++. Yeah, parentheses.
But you're not getting any extra credit for.
No, you're not getting any extra credit.
With that question you showed, then you said like you could do it with one line where you sort of cast the list to a set and then the set intersection. You get told to do it manually anyway.
Yeah.
So you just say, hey, I'm smart, I know Python, but
Yeah.
you're going to say you don't really know anything. Why not actually solve it properly?
Yeah, I mean, the polite way of saying it, the more polite way of saying it would be is that the interviewer will go, oh yeah, that's very interesting. Now can you do it where there's, more than one item, each particular matching within the list is supposed to go to account. And in which case you couldn't just cast a sort, you have to do it a bit more manually. Any questions?
Jeff, do you know the approximate number of internships they take a year?
In my year, there was about 25.
Those books like cracking the coding interview.
Sorry?
Books like cracking the coding interview or something which actually have to get through it. Did you go through those books about preparing for your
Actually, not really. But I did start reading, one of the ones I did start reading was a big red book called Algorithm Design, something like that.
Is that the Skinner one?
Yeah.
The algorithm design.
The Algorithm Design Handbook, which is interesting. It also has like some of those stupid questions like how many counter tuners are there. But it also has lots of interesting tidbits about some ad hoc coming out of algorithms. It's probably worth it.
Do you know what you're doing at Google when you start working there?
So I've been assigned to the site reliability engineer team as a software engineer, which is interesting. I think that might mean I'm going to do more things similar to what I did as an intern, but not security focused.
So you're going back to Malibu or Sydney?
No, I'm going to Sydney. So I've got one friend who recently got employed as well. He's going to Matthew, and there's another friend who's been working at Google for quite a while, who's been in Sydney, but now he's going to Tokyo, which is good fun again. Yeah, I mean, it's anywhere in the world. And I guess you'd probably go where you find more people in the team. For instance, the geo team's mostly in Sydney. And the core search team works mostly in Mountain View. But you find that you can work in most offices on most things. So big people. All right.
Any more questions? If not, please join me in saying joyful thank you.